Hey guys, welcome to another voiceover tutorial. My name is Sakimi-chan, and for this voiceover tutorial we will be doing something for another tutorial for starting up artists, or at least the ones that have a basic knowledge in 2D line art and they want to transition into 3D. I know I've already done a tutorial previously about that, so this will be kind of like part 2, but especially for 2D line art transitioning into 3D. So here I have an example. This is actually one of my older pieces when I was still in high school. I like to do commissions for an online community called Gaia Online. So yeah, this is one of the commissions I did for someone, and I hope they're fine if I use this as an example. But basically, I believe this is a male character, if not a female, pretty androgynous. So I will be doing two interpretations. One is male and one is female, and we can just say that they're siblings. Alright, so let's say that you are a digital artist and you already have a basic knowledge of line art and some basic knowledge of coloring. So for this piece, I actually colored it in a program called Open Canvas. It's a Japanese program. It was kind of more user-friendly, I would say. So I was starting out, I used that, and I liked the fact that it was really blendy. So as you can see, it's fairly softly blended, and it's pretty much because of the program. But anyways, let's get started. Alright, so let's say you start out with your 2D piece and you want to start transitioning it into more of a 3D piece. Okay, as you can see, it's a little pixelated because the original size I had was smaller, so I increased the size so I can paint in more detail. Alright, so first transition. I believe we can start making it look more 3D just by simply adding a bit more shadow to the hair. And a lot of the times we just need a bit more shadow underneath the overlapping elements, for example, the hair. So right now I do have a bit of shading underneath the hair. However, if I were to darken it slightly, I believe that it'll start look more 3D. So let's just do that. So I've selected around the hair using the lasso tool. So now I'm only painting underneath the selection that I have going on. So there we go. So now if we zoom out, you can see that it's starting to feel a little more 3D just with the shadow, and we can do that for the other side as well. Also, you have to be careful of where you choose to put the shadow. So here, logically, I'm thinking there's a patch of hair that's going on top of the ear, overlapping the ear, so there should be shadow underneath the hair here. And also, the ear is overlapping the hair, so there should be shadow underneath here too. And so on. Here too, maybe not as much, maybe just a bit. So you really have to think about this when you start transitioning 2D into 3D. And simple stuff like adding just a bit of shadow within the hair can really help make it look, start to look more painted or 3D. Now this is done with, let's say you're not comfortable enough to merge line art and and color into one layer like I have here. Everything's in one layer. If you're not confident, that's fine. Just make a separate layer and start layering the shadow on top on the separate layer. And notice how it is not set to multiply as you would a lot of the times you would for shadow. So if I set to multiply, it will be a lot darker. But I prefer to set it on normal and pick the shade color myself. So there we have it. Immediately it's starting to look a lot more 3D. But as you can see, the face is still a little bit 2D-ish. There's still much to do, but just with this, a simple shading on the hair can really help push it towards the more 3D look. So if that's like the degree of painted look that you want, just go for that step and that's it. However, if you wanna keep going, we can move on to the next step. So we have the shadow for the hair. I think I should name it so you hair shadow. So I'm just going to rename it so it's easier for you guys to follow along. So the next step we're gonna do is just to darken the skin. Yes, if the skin is a little darker, there's more play around with highlights. And I believe it's easier to have the skin be darker and layer on highlights that way. So as you can see, immediately we're just going to contour the outer silhouette of the skin, the face, just like this. And if you think it's too much, we can reduce it and make sure the layer is on darken. Darken is sort of like multiply, except it does not make the darker areas even darker. It just makes the whatever pixel that is lighter than the color you pick darker, pretty much. So let's, for example, this is multiply, and this is darken. You see the difference? I prefer darken over multiply. So once we have that done, let's just clean it up a little bit, and for that purpose I use the airbrush to brush on the dark color. Alright, so now that we have the skin a bit darker, we can do so as well for the hair. So right now, the style that I used to do back then was highlighting pretty much every strand, as you can see, almost every strand. And if we want to make it 3D looking or more realistic, we gotta change up the way we shade highlights on hair. And I believe I covered the same thing on the previous voiceover tutorial, which was the how to overcome airbrush look. So we're just gonna use the same technique, which I'll cover once again. But anyway, so what I'm trying to do is just creating a more flatter looking hair, but at the same time, as you can see, I'm leaving part of it unshaded. So this part will be my highlight. So we can do that throughout the hair, and we gotta be consistent to follow through. So again, with a bit of highlight there and maybe here too. Okay, so that's step 2. It's getting there. It's still not there yet because this is more of a I guess stylized anime look. So of course, if I want to make it into a 2D painting or a more realistic, I gotta fix some of the proportion I have going on. So yeah, but I mean, if you don't want to really change your style, then that's perfectly fine. It just requires a bit more experimenting with the steps that I will show you guys. So step 3, I'm going to start painting over it. and usually you want to make sure you have a big enough canvas to have nice detail. Again, how do you know if the canvas is too small? The canvas is too small if you have the need to zoom in more than 100%. So if you have the need to zoom in 100%, like, oh, it's still too small, I want to paint even more detailed. If you zoom in to 200%, that means your canvas is too small and that you need to make it bigger. Anyways, let's get started. So this is going to be darken. And let's start painting over. So this is where the fun begins, because now you're going to take care of the lines by painting over them, or not, it depends what you're going for. So first we gotta fix some of the anatomy, so I'm just gonna start painting. So for painting, I like to stick with the solid round brush. As always, it's my favorite brush, and if you watch a lot of my tutorials, most of the times I will be using that. So let's get started. I will be duplicating step 3 here, and I will make this the dude version. The male version. Oops. Version. Gonna move it down here. Alright, let's keep going. So painting over, I got a nice base here, base color, a bit darker than when we first started, but that's okay. Alright, so remember when I said we have to follow through all the time? That means we gotta follow through on the shadow as well. So apparently I got shadow going on over here, so that means this part of the hair needs to also be in shadow. So I'm following through on what I have. Alright then, let's keep going. So shadow on this side of the hair. Now for the hair, it's a little tricky. For the most part, you can definitely kind of shade according to how you had the line art. Like as you can see, I have the line art contouring patches of hair, and it's fine to follow that with shadow. In the end, I think it'll still look pretty 3D looking. So we can just do that. And for the nose, then have shading over the nose. So this will be the female version. So gotta have the lip more plump. Let me utilize a different color. So I just selected a rosier color. And then the chin. So as you can see, I'm using a dark color to first outline the chin, contour the chin, and then I blend that in. And for the lips, if you are not too sure of how to paint lips, make sure to use a reference. Your own lip would do just fine, or of course you can also look up lips on Google. Google is like one of the useful tools for learning to paint, because you have the possibility to look up so much reference. But anyways, right now I'm just adding some shadow underneath the eyes here. And then for the neck. So right now I have this connecting line here, but I'm going to correct it to here. So a lot of the times, if you look back on some of your old work, if you see something weird, that means you're improving, and that's really good. So yeah, just if you have time, do that for fun. That will help you evaluate how much you've improved. And as always, right now I am just contouring these areas, contouring with a darker color around your character silhouette really helps to make it look a bit more 3D and painted. So now I'll show you guys what I mean. You see what I mean if you just contour the character silhouette? Of course you don't want to do it, there needs to be a level of how dark you can contour, and that actually takes time to get used to. Like, the more you paint, the more you'll be able to tell if something looks weird or not. And of course, if you stick on a piece too much, sometimes you won't be able to tell at all. Yeah, anyways, let's keep going with the hair. So again, using what I already have in the piece, just going to keep shading the hair. And of course, we can switch between the solid round brush and airbrush. So just going to make a nice, soft swoop motion to isolate this shiny bit of hair. And of course, we can even make this area a little darker. So the darker, the more contrast you have between the highlight and the shadow, it creates more of that shiny hair look. So we can keep going and add it nice throughout. So if we zoom out, you can start to feel that nice shine, the nice shine that we have. Now the next thing I'm gonna do is just change the size of the eyes, or even edit it a little bit. So I copy pasted the eyes onto a separate layer, and now I'm going to repaint it. So I'm going to redraw the eyebrows to more of a feminine shape, and as well as correct the nose shape, and of course edit the shape of the eyes to my more current style. Now this is really more subjective, so if your style is different, then this step for you is how you would paint your eyes. But make sure to have a fair amount of shadow, which means we have the shadow near the eyes, also a little bit of shadow underneath the brows. So there we go. And then the hair. And there needs to be shadow inside the eyes. So right now I have darkened the pupils. So darkening the pupils actually helps to make it a bit more realistic. As you can see, this is very bright. In contrast to this is a lot darker, and it helps grounding it. So realistically, eyes are not naturally this vivid. So if you just darken it slightly, it might look a little more realistic. And of course, you can also add a bit of that nice eyebrow texture. And then we're going to add a bit of that nose shadow to help indicate the nose is protruding from the face. And of course, we're going to add some nice cheek shading as well to make it feel like there is a bit of dimension on the cheek as well. And of course, don't forget the pink part within the eyes. I'm not really sure what the technical term for it, but if you look at your own eye, you'll be able to see it. And then of course followed by the tear duct. And if you put these two things in your character's eyes, you're bound to look a lot more realistic. And of course, we finish it off by giving your character a bit of eye bags. And after that, maybe a bit of eyelashes. And if your character is a guy, don't worry, guys have eyelashes too, so feel free to give him some nice, luscious eyelashes. That rhymed. Alright. So there we go. And maybe have a bit of room for a nice little nostril. So that feels more realistic. So this is more of a full transition from more of a stylized cartoony anime, sort of leaning towards that style, towards more semi-realistic, but still with a bit of that anime touch. Okay, so since I've painted over the hair, as you can see, I've lost a fair amount of shadow, so we have to always put it back. So now let's put back the shadow, use a very dark color, and just very softly painted over the face, as if the hair is leaving its own shadow on the face. And of course I'm gonna have a bit of time to just blend certain elements together, just like that, and of course here too. So there you have it. Now if we deselect, this is before and after. Already it's looking a lot more realistic, right? But that is not all. We still have this whole area to do, and then in the end we can do a bit of tweaking. But yeah, that's the general idea of it. Just start, I'll do a overall summary towards the end of the tutorial. But for now, we'll just keep going. This is actually pretty relaxing. So these ideas are, a lot of them are just inspired by the group session that you guys and I participate in, which is just pretty much me paint over and giving you guys critiques, which is pretty fun and a very good experience. And a lot of the times I get ideas from you guys, which is great. Because I don't think I'll be able to come up with these type of ideas if you guys weren't there to help me think of them. Because pretty much I'm just thinking, what do you guys need to help you learn, and what you guys are really interested in learning. So these ideas come from some of the questions you guys ask for those sessions. Alright, so let's move on. Paint. Actually, this is paint over 1, and we're gonna do paint over 2. So now we have all the changes in layers, so feel free to check them out. It's easier for you guys to look at. Alright, so let's keep going with the neck. Right now it's a little, for a girl, we gotta do a few things to make it a bit more feminine. So first off, for females, well, at least visually too, how to differentiate a pretty boy from a girl. You gotta just make the female a little more feminine and cute looking. That's what we're gonna do. So first off, reduce the length of the chin. And soften the cheekbone. So right now I'm using the airbrush to just do a very thorough blend, and you gotta make sure there is no awkward plotches. It needs to be smooth throughout, and of course a bit of blush will help with making your character look a bit more feminine. And now I'm going to go on the neck part. So the neck needs to be a little thinner looking. I'm painting the hair out just slightly. So the hair over here needs to be darker based on what I feel throughout this piece. And again, realism compared to more stylized cartoony look, the color palette is a lot more mute and darker. So if we just think of that, go over all the more vivid colors that are meant to be shadow and make them a little darker and a little bit more mute in tone, just like what I'm doing right here. And of course, following some of that line work already established helps with that too. Okay, now I can do the same thing I did for the upper area, which is just to isolate certain selection of the hair and add this very small highlight, just like that. So if you zoom out, you'll kind of see what I mean. Alright then, that's good. Now we're gonna work on the ears a little bit. So for the ears, I'm gonna start off with a very reddish color. It looks a lot darker, and I'm gonna use the airbrush to gently just kind of have more of the tone near where there should be shadow, and then gently paint a little bit over the ear in general. So if you zoom out, that gives the illusion that the ear is kind of blushing, right? And it actually just adds a bit more realism to it, because typically there should be warm spots on your face, such as the nose, the cheeks, the lips, sometimes around the eyes, and then mostly a lot of it on the ear. And of course you can also add just a touch of it on the shoulders as well. Alright, so now I'm going to just extend the canvas here. Just a tad. Give a bit of cleavage. And the arm shadow. So this might be a little challenging, but if you look up any reference for girls that is kind of similar to this pose, you'll see that there should be shadow here to emphasize the arm. Well, maybe the cleavage don't have to be that prominent. And maybe we can keep it kind of like this. Let's clean it up for a nicer shape. And also here, maybe just a bit of indication. There we go. And now, cool. So that's pretty much it. And of course, if you have the time, you would want to refine this further, which I will do later. But for now, let's move on to the dude version. Alright guys, let's switch on to the male version. So for the male version, I think we need to switch it up a bit, so I'm going to show you another way of, well, sort of another way. Let me just organize this a little better. And put this into, oops, the female one, so we don't have so much group going on, so, okay. Let's get started. So that is the dude number 1. Number 2. So for this, you gotta make sure everything is merged down into one layer. Now we're gonna select the part that we want to modify, and we're gonna go into liquify, which can also be found Let me just check where it is. It's probably just up here. So if you go filter, liquify, and that should pop out a window, which my computer's lagging a little bit. But yeah, here we go. So because of this, we will be able to have a bit of fun. So now you just have to kind of manipulate it in a way that you're satisfied with. So for the dude variation, let's make it a bit more masculine. Make the lips a little thinner, have a longer chin, maybe an Adam's apple. Actually, we gotta extend the neck a bit. So this is actually pretty fun. You just have to kind of tweak around with it a little bit till you are generally satisfied. I know some of these areas kind of wonky, but don't worry. We just need a good base to start off with, and then we're gonna paint over it like we did the other one. So maybe something like this. Let me just see if I can fix the the jawline here. It's a little wonky. We might need to do a pretty heavy paint over, but yeah, there we go. So the whole point is I just wanted to show you guys that you can do a quick edit real fast, especially if you want to do a variation of male and female. Now I'm just going to, I copy pasted the head here and made it slightly bigger. And after you're done, you want to erase part of this layer here to make it blend a little better. And then, of course, you merge it down. Okie dokie. There we are. Now before we start, I'm just going to quickly isolate this character a bit better. So I'm using the lasso tool to kind of select the silhouette of the character. And now I'm gonna hit Ctrl C, which is copy, and Ctrl Shift V to paste. Now I'm gonna delete this. Now what I'm left with is just the character, and now I'm gonna have the options to give this character a nice lovely background. So for this, I'm going to make the background actually not that color, maybe a very mute. What about a nice blue? Something like that. So now he can have a background. So that'll be step 2. Alright. And now from that we can keep going. So this is a little bit of a detour for me. Of course that is assuming that you guys have everything on separate layer. Me, I didn't, so I had to just do a quick fix with that. Going to move him a little forward so I can cut off the background back here. Actually, we can probably extend this. We can also restrain the character to this circle here. if you so desire. Alright then. So now we can start painting over. Now I'm gonna be a bit more free with this one because I already showed you guys some basic techniques. And let's restrain everything to this one layer here. Restrain is pretty much Alt and you restrain it down to this layer. Actually, we can't do that yet. There we go. Restrain it to this layer. So now I can freely use the airbrush to just add very general shadow. So I'm gonna add shadow here, and so unlike the female version, the dude is gonna have a lighter hair, but the highlight, as you can see, is very mute. It's not very vivid. So here, once I'm done, I'm going to be kind of fixing it just a tad. First off with the jawline here, and I'm going to make the bangs here a bit shorter, so the ear will probably show through here. And we're gonna put a bit of shadow underneath. So a lot of this is just purely painting now. This is a little bit more challenging than the female steps that I've showed you guys because this requires some knowledge in painting. Something like that. Of course, let's start adding some of the shadows. So basic shadow underneath the brow bone. And of course, around the nose. And the cheek area here. That is one form of lighting. And make sure there's shadow underneath the lip and the chin has a bit of highlight going for it. And then last but not least, a bit of shadow underneath the nose. And then of course we have the shadow here too. So this time the shadow is a little darker, but the basic is the same. I am still contouring the character, as you can see. So there we go, real fast, just with one layer. You can start by making it a lot more 3D looking. Now we're going to duplicate this once again for step 3. Alright, step 3 is very similar. Pretty much we have to keep refining. Paint over one. Base. That's the character base and that's the background. Paint over 2. Alright then, let's do it. So immediately you can darken the eyes for more of that realistic look. And maybe darken the eyebrows. Darkening the eyebrows and making them a little thicker will make it feel more masculine. Right now I'm painting the shadow. You can also do this with the lasso tool, but you can also paint. It's a little more challenging because you have to make sure you have the hair as well as the shadow underneath the hair strand. So there we have it. And of course the absolutely needed eye bags. you can also give the dude a bit of detail. I don't know what this is called. It's like a crease on the face. It's usually connected to the nose. And then we go ahead and make sure the nose is highlighted. And now we're going to start softening it. So first we paint with the solid round brush to make sure the shape is there. After we take care of that, we can start blending everything in with the airbrush. So usually I like to have a combination of the two when I paint. And just if you switch between them often enough, you will get a nice understanding. And also you'll get so used to it that it'll become natural for you to do so. So there we go. And adding a bit of detail for the nose. So for the male, I'm making it, giving him more detail on the face, as in more shadows. For the female, I like to keep it more ambiguous, less detailed. Less detailed also feels a little more feminine. So less detail on the face means more youthful and a more feminine. I'm just going to fix the hair there. There we go. I think we might need to make the nose a bit shorter. So if we zoom out, starting to look a bit more painted, right? And that is a lot of it to do with the fact that it's gotten a lot darker as well. Actually, we could also, let's bring back the eyes here. You just have to make sure it's darker. Actually, I kind of like that rebellious look. Let's bring that back. Now that we did, gotta go back and fix the hair. Now I have to elaborate on the other side, but you guys don't really have to do it if you have a different view, different angle for your character. Now I am going to copy merge and move this forward just a bit and merge it down once I'm happy. So it's just pretty much a bit of change in the face position. So once I'm happy with everything, I can merge it down once again. So this is again one layer, and I can just keep tweaking around with the proportion until I'm happy with it. So maybe change up a bit. Slant the jawline. Have the ears pointed up a bit more and stuff like that. So you can really have fun with this. Just going to make the eyes slightly smaller. So the male elf looks a little sadder than the female elf. But yeah, that's pretty much another way of doing it. Now we can actually go ahead and select around the ear, and you guessed it, we're going to put shadow under it using the solid round brush. you can also use the airbrush. However, with the solid round brush, you can also start putting a bit of details in as well, using shadow and highlight. Kind of like this. And of course, we gotta put shadow underneath this patch of hair as well. There we go. Now for this area. So for this area, unlike the previous one, let's keep it a bit less contrasted and just use the color that we have available to us to help blend in bit better. So as you can see, you can hardly see the lines now. I'm gonna select the shadow that I already picked and put a bit of it up top here. Okay. And elaborate on the hair on the other side. Okay, and of course I'm gonna clean that up. And on this side too, delete. There we go. So now it's more clean. And I suppose we can kind of cut the hair just a teeny bit. We can also increase the size of the neck, make it a bit more masculine. All the side hair. There we have it. Maybe not have him look so pissed, just gonna change the shape of his lips. So a bit of his eyebrows, have it show through the hair by indicating just slightly, but very lightly paint the eyebrows in a manner that it's not too dark. And we have a bit of shadow underneath that hair as well. And let's make sure to make the pupil, the whites of the eyes, a blue tone. Usually white will have a bluish tint in real life if they are in shadow, or any other color if there is a surrounding dominant color like sky, or if there's neon color, then that would influence quite a bit the white tone. And of course, gotta finish painting the ear. So there we have it, step 3, just pretty much adding on to it and refining further. Now let's move on to step 4. Alright guys, I just got back. Let's continue. So right now we're moving on to step 4, and I'm not sure if I mentioned this before I went to sleep, but we're just gonna keep refining it. So the previous step, I had actually indicated quite a bit of dark shadow and also shadow that is solid, very solid. So sometimes we want to try to blend in the shadow a little bit into the base color as well. So we're just gonna do that. Alright, let's get to it. So I'm gonna make another layer. I'm gonna name it blend. So as you know, usually you want to try to switch between the solid round brush and the airbrush. So before I used the solid round brush for indicating the shadow. Now gonna switch to airbrush, which is essentially the solid round brush, but with the hardness turned to 0%. So once we have that, we can go in and start smoothing it out. So right now, I'm just gonna take care of, as you can see, there's some rough edges right here, and notice how I didn't touch this area because I still want to maintain a bit of sharpness within the shadow. But however, I'm gonna try to blend in most of the areas. And you might be wondering, how do I know which side to blend? As you can see, the shadow has two sides. That really depends. Usually you want to try to keep the silhouette sharp, as in like this whole neck is a silhouette overlapping the shoulder. That means the overlapping area should be sharp, and the one that is not overlapping, which is the neck part over here, you can kind of blend in the shadow that way. So, and also a lot of the times it's just practice, and also the more you see works from other artists, you'll kind of start to get how they do it, and naturally you will build your own library, just like what I'm doing right here. As you can see, I made the shadow soft on this side. However, I made sure to keep it sharp on this side, the contrast between the highlight and the shadow, because usually there's like a nice indent where the bone is, and in a way it's kind of overlapping your skin, so there's that sharpness going on. So yeah, of course, comes with practice. So if you don't get it right away, it's okay. Just go slow, build your own visual library through looking at other people's work, or even just referencing through photo reference, and naturally in time you'll be able to get it also. And that's pretty much how I learned as well through my artistic journey. Pretty much I used a lot of reference. Most of the times it's just taking pictures of myself on my phone and then observing it and then referencing off of it. But that was when I was back in college. Now I don't do it as much. If I need reference, I usually would look on Google and just Google it. And I also have a inspiration folder, which is pretty much a collection of work that I found online and that I think would be a good idea for the future. That's a good idea to have for you guys as well. If you definitely get an inspiration folder. So now I'm gonna be doing the same thing as I did for her ear. So just going to have a bit of blush going on the tip of his ear, and a bit of it inside as well, and maybe a bit here. And of course, for the dude, maybe a slight orange-ish tone for the blush. So the blush could be pretty much any tone, as long as it's a shade warmer than your current basic skin tone. You can even use the lip color as blush, because lips will always be slightly warmer in tone. So there we have it. And now if we zoom in, it's starting to look a lot more natural, right? And now we can do a lot more things with this if we just keep going. But now I will end it here for just this stage. So that's step 4. We didn't really do much except just to blend out some of the shadows. So a lot of the times you'll want to do this just after, let's say, you see here it's very sharp, right? Sometimes you want to blend in some of these shadows on the face, and if you don't know which side to blend, or if you need a guide, reference. So yeah, as you can see, I blended the side quite well, a bit of it here, and of course use a combination of airbrush to get some of that trickier shadow to blend well. So yeah, that is step 4. Okie dokie, so we've reached step 4 for both pieces. Now we're gonna do a final pass for both of these characters. Actually, I believe the final pass should be done in a separate canvas. So I'm going to be doing the final pass on a separate canvas. So I'm going to first I'm going to copy paste and get the size of canvas I need. So when you copy paste and when you create a new canvas, copy merge, sorry, when you make a new canvas after you done that function, it will automatically have exactly the right size you selected for it. So it's quite convenient for transferring your work onto a different canvas. Okay, so there we go. So this is a separate canvas. Oops, I dragged it on here too. Let's drag it back here. Alright, that's good. It's a bit of a mess, bear with me. And now I will be extending the canvas, and I'm gonna bring the female version, which I guess we could call this version his sister or their siblings, something like that. Alright, so I'm gonna save this file. Also going to move the title over. Oops. This title over here, make it bigger, so now it's more organized. Alright, so I'm gonna save this. So primarily we will be working the final step on this canvas where we will be doing a final pass. So right away I'm gonna see if I can isolate the girl as well. So again, just using the lasso tool to only select the girl, the outside. Actually just the outer edges of her silhouette, so that I can isolate her on her own. Actually, I think I might have screwed up. Oh, have to bring her forward, and of course, as you know, when we do this, gotta make sure it's one single layer. It really depends on what you want, and I think it's more efficient for me to merge everything down. However, if you're not confident enough, you do not have to. It'll just be a lot more work. You're gonna have to go through all the layers and do the same thing. Alright, so almost done. There we go. So I've selected all the outer rim, so I'm just gonna hit delete, and now I have the character on just one nice little solid piece. And let's move the guy over here and have him facing her that way. Actually, we might have to do it like that. If I have to rotate one of them, the lighting might be off too. I have to... Let's see if we can... So I've made the background a little bigger so that it covers both of the characters. I'm gonna merge everything down. Oops, merge everything down so we have the background layer and the background group and the character group. And gotta make sure it's around the same size. So let me try to make them both into slightly different styles. So for him, I'm gonna still maintain this color palette, the more mute color palette, and for her, I'm gonna try to make her a bit more vivid in terms of color palette. So that's what we're gonna do. Alright, let's keep going. Let's start up with the male version, because I feel like we're almost towards the completion of him anyways. So let's get going. Alright, first up, I'm just going to start cleaning up some of the edges. Emphasize a bit of the shadow and blend in the edges of the shadow. And off we go with the hair. Try to fix a bit of the hair as well. Just add a little more detail to them. And of course, gonna use a combination of airbrush to blend in some of these areas, these trickier areas. There we go. And of course, we have the upper area. I'm going to just paint over it. Like so. And the top, so I'm going by making sure there's shadow layered on top of highlight and then shadow to create this indentation that we have on our heads where pretty much your hair would meet. And let's just keep blending downwards. And of course you can add a bit of these random brush strokes for a bit of that hair texture. Just slightly. Just to give it a bit of detail to the hair. And then you can blend the lines in a little bit as well. And the inside of the hair. Now we can work a bit on the face. Maybe just a little more detail. So just going in to refine a bit of the feature and maybe even softening it up a tad. I'm using a combination of solid round brush and airbrush for that. How do you know which brush to use and when? A lot of the times it's really honestly just by experience, and once you get used to your program, you'll get a feel of what brush does what best, and you'll be able to switch to them naturally. So let's say I want to refine a shape, I will probably use the solid round brush. And when I feel like blending in some of the harder edges, like here, or I want to transition the shadow more subtly, I will switch to the airbrush for that. So a lot of that is just using the tools enough to know what they're best at and what you need. I'm going to add a bit of the freckling or beauty spots. And now let's work on the eyes a bit. It is a little slanted, but we can correct that. So this will be the pink of the eyes. Of course, the dude will get a bit of eyelashes. Some guys have longer eyelashes than girls, so do not neglect male eyelashes. I know you normally don't put male eyelashes because it makes them look a little effeminate, but you know, they still do have it. Even those manly guys have it. That's one of the reasons why I like Final Fantasy. All the characters have eyelashes, no matter if they're old or if they are guys. Alright then. Let's see if we can refine those lip. Oh, hold on. So just a bit darker in tone. And a bit of these lines help create the lip texture that we all have. The lip wrinkles, I suppose you could call it. Only if you want to, it's not really necessary. Gonna go in here and put into nostril a bit better. And the nose shadow. Now, of course, let me blend that in, smooth it out subtly into the skin. So this is an example of how you can use airbrush just to subtly blend it into the skin. And need a bit more shadow on the lips. Gonna make sure the shadow is a nice dark red. And of course apply shadow underneath the upper lip onto the lower lip. And I'm just going to play around with the shape of the lips. Just making it slightly smaller. And also cleaning up that area. I think maybe even, copy Control Shift V, which lets you paste in place. I'm just going to move the lips up a tad. Actually, we could also try to move the nose down. At least make it a bit bigger. Like so. And of course, we will be needing that nose shadow. Indicate a bit of shadow underneath. Will be able to help you create a more 3D-ish feel. Always remember, if you want to paint a bit more 3D, always remember to put down shadow where it's needed, and do not be shy with how dark that shadow is. I've seen before in some of your work in progress, for some of you, it seems that you guys are a bit shy about putting in darker shadow, and don't worry, I know it's scary because when I was first starting out, I was kind of scared of making mistakes, and that's, I think, a bit of the mindset of a starter out artist, and you shouldn't be. Always, I mean, if you're scared, don't worry, paint it on a separate layer. But definitely make sure to experiment with how dark shadow should be. And usually shadow needs to be pretty dark. At least darker than what I've seen throughout some of the work in progress. But too much darkness is also not a good idea. How do you know how dark the shadow needs to be? That really depends, and I don't really have a right answer. I guess for me personally, it's just depends on the amount of practice you do, and the amount of reference, the observation you do throughout your time as an artist. And the more observation, more practice you do, you'll kind of get a natural sense of how dark the shadow needs to be in a piece. And of course, there's a lot of editing tools as well for you to experiment with the darkness of your piece. Alright, so let's pass on to the neck area where the hair is. Let's see if we can kind of fix this area by adding a bit of shadow to it. So again, I'm shading, but in lines, patterning, following the flow of the hair silhouette. Try to do that when you're painting hair, especially if you're not using a lot of like shiny contrast. This is more of a solid looking hair without too much highlight, of course, and this can be appealing for some characters. The characters all have different hair types. Anyways, let's go on and kind of refine the ear. As you can see, I did one line using the solid round brush, and then I kind of transitioned the rest using the airbrush, and now I'm switching back to the solid round brush just to contour out the ear. And that is, of course, one of the more challenging areas of the face. Definitely use reference for that if you are new. Use your own ear if you can. And yeah, there's a lot of like special crevices for the ear that you probably need to remember. But it's not too difficult as long as you rinse, repeat. So if you paint enough ears, you'll be able to paint them without reference at some point. Alright, I think the ear is probably one of my weaker points as an artist. I don't really like to focus very much on the ear. That's why a lot of the times the ears in my pieces don't look as good as the rest. But yeah, I still did my research, of course, on the ears. Alright, so again, the hair is overlapping the ears, so naturally I'm gonna put a bit of shadow underneath it. And making sure the shadow blends in nicely in a soft manner. And let's see if we can sharpen that cheek line there, giving this elf guy very sharp features. Sometimes there's room for a bit of hair detailing, especially like you know, strands, off strands here and there every now and then, to give the hair a bit of that fluffy feel, or more of a, oh, this is hair texture. Somewhat like that. And of course, I remember he had earring, so let's bring back his earring. For this, I'm gonna use a darker color, even though the earring will be gold. But this way, you can add highlights in there, like this. And you can try to add a bit more shadow in it once again, so it's layering on shadow, highlight, and then highlight. This way you'll be able to create a nice contrast fairly easily. Then we can clean up the ear and continue off with the freckling. Maybe some darker shadow underneath the ear. Alright, so there we go, we have the dude. Maybe we can give him a bit of some tattooing, elven mark or something rather. So let's just do Not really sure. I'm just gonna try something here. Any pattern that you want. Let's do some nice wavy designs. And maybe a bit on his face, on the forehead as well. Actually, I'm not too sure. Maybe like that. I know that some elves have like chin tattoos. It's kind of the alternative to a male elf having beard. I think I'll just have the chin tattoo, because he doesn't have any facial hair, so this tattoo will give the impression of facial hair, you could say. Maybe a bit of tattoo underneath the eyes. And then you can zoom out. Merge down once you're happy. And one more thing. Let's create a nice rim light on this side. Rim light usually goes near where the shaded side is, because it helps define the silhouette further. So we're just gonna have that. Some nice rim light near the shadow, shaded area. There we go. Maybe we can have simulate some of the hair strands. And then actually, let me see if I can add something like a hairband or something, some sort of decoratives. Going to flip over the canvas to make sure everything's good. So for this, oops, let's make it into like a parade thing. So just going to do this type of patterning on it. Sometimes all you need for detail is simple patterning. And once you're done, we gotta make sure that it feels like it's rested on top of the hair. So we gotta fix the shading. So let's say a patch of hair is overlapping it here. Gotta make sure there's shadow underneath to demonstrate that. And also here, probably gonna have shadow underneath. Once again, there's a bit of hair overlapping. So you always have to think of shadow placement, especially if you have some sort of accessory. I gotta always think, gotta have shadow underneath that accessory, because it's overlapping of the character, or the character's face, or skin, something like that. Always need to indicate that, don't forget. I know it's easily forgotten. Yeah, I think painting is also especially when you're learning, you spend a great deal of your mind making sure that shadow highlight is all there. As you can see, I'm painting in shadow very close to where the braid, the headpiece is. That actually help indicate that the headpiece is actually indenting the hair, and that's sometimes you gotta do that, especially for hair accessories. Same with the one above, and we can indicate a bit of shine by putting shadow on both sides of the highlight. Let's do the same with this. And then maybe have a nice little crystal on the tip here. So first we start off with a dark color. Let's say my crystal is gonna be a nice yellow-green sort of tone. And then we add a bit of highlight. And don't forget, this stone will cast a shadow on top of the skin. So we do that. Just very softly indicate a bit of shadow, and then of course it will probably cast a bit of highlight in there as well. Last but not least, we get a bit of that nice shine. And I guess there's room for playing around. Make sure there's a shadow here and then highlight. The highlight is inside the shadow. And we can use a bit brighter color as well on the outer silhouette of the jewel. There we go. And then maybe this thing has another side. It goes behind the ear and overlaps onto, actually, maybe not there. Maybe here. Maybe it has like a section that goes underneath. So again, with the simple braid texture, and then a jewel. Let's follow the same color, and then we have the shadow. Don't forget, this line here is casting a shadow on his neck. And highlight. And then highlight within the shadow here, casted from the bead. Always gotta make sure there is highlight. So now if you zoom out, without, it adds a bit more individuality. And I'm going to see if I can thicken those eyebrows so that it feels a bit more masculine, even though the character looks, this dude, elf dude, looks a little feminine, but some eyebrows could really go a long way. And of course we can finish off the eyes, adding a bit of blue highlight. It's almost unrecognizable. And then one dot. Or maybe in here. One dot of highlight inside the eyes as well as on the other side. Maybe he can have a bit of scarring on his face. Just to create a sense of character. Scars and facial imperfections usually can help the character look a lot more grounded and realistic. At least that's what I was taught in while working at Bauer. they really like those individual marks. Alright, so now I'm gonna do something tricky. I'm going to attempt to define a bit of hair on this side. Notice how this side, the color is light. That's because I want to make it feel like there's a strong amount of light in the background casting light behind the hair, and that's why it's so bright. So there we have it. Now time to clean it up with the lasso tool and merge it down once I'm happy. Okay, it's time to work on the female version now. First off, gotta make sure her size is around the same as the male version. Just gotta line that up a bit nicer. Alright, there we go. So notice how the female version color palette is slightly more vivid, more bright than the male version. Let's try to keep it at that. Basically, we're gonna go through the very similar thing. I'm gonna try to make her look slightly different, and again using the solid round brush to isolate the hair strands. And also it serves as a kind of looks like shadow as well, so that's a plus. Gotta make sure there is shadow and highlights, and keeping it in only certain areas of the piece. Let's work on the face a bit. Select the eyes. Just going to move it around a bit. There we go. And of course, just like the dude, we can go into liquify and just play around with the proportion a bit before we start refining it further. Maybe make the hair a bit straighter like that. And something like this. Alright, I think we're good to go. So now, similarly to the male version, we are just going to start refining certain areas and also blending them together, making the details with the solid brown brush, and then later on softening those details. That, and maybe brighten up the eyes just a tad. Maybe her eyes could be slightly lighter, using the airbrush to make the eyes a bit brighter. As you can see, I used the airbrush on the inside of the eyes, however I'm sharpening the outside of the eyes. And maybe a bit of interesting makeup, extending those lashes just a tad. Also, the opposite side, just have a bit of indication that there's an eye on the side as well. And then we have this hair flowing over here. Make sure that the hair also has shadow casted on the rest of the hair and skin. Give a bit of indication that the cheek is here, and making sure this hair portion is in shadow just so that it could pop out. The skin would pop out against the darkness of the hair. And then just to refine the lips. Let's make it look like she has a bit of teeth showing. There we go. And maybe a bit of definition between the lip here. Make it nice and poofy, and then of course the shadow underneath the lips. And of course, I'm gonna flip it over to see if everything is on track. Seems so. Maybe lower the angle of the eyebrows and also make it lighter looking as well. So softening her eyebrows will create a more innocent look. And we can play around with that. Lightening the lips has a more natural feel to it, and I guess reduce the darkness. The eyeshadow darkness will also help have a more innocent look to it, or less makeup, you could say. Have a bit of pink here, pink there, and pink here inside near the eyes, underneath the eyebrows bridge. There we go. And now let's work on the cheeks. But gotta make sure to define the jawline. Like that. And remember what I said, gotta use a actually you can also use the smudge tool to blend. It's pretty much almost like the airbrush, except you don't need to paint, you just blend. And make sure to only blend on one side, only on the side that you think is not overlapping the other. Let's continue with the hair. And maintaining the same sort of color palette. Darken this area because the hair is overlapping there. Then over over here as well. And let's indicate a bit of that hair going down the other side too. Of course, make sure to indicate some shadow casted from the hair onto the neck, using whatever method you can. So right here I'm just painting it with a solid round brush and then going back with the airbrush to blend it all together. Here too, we can use the lasso tool for that, just to indicate the shadow casted from the hair onto the neck. There we have it. The rest of the hair, again trying to be very subtle, indicate just a bit of highlight within the shaded tips of the hair, and clean up the silhouette. Hair too. And we're gonna clean this up as well using the colors that we already have. So again, we layer shadow on top of highlight on top of shadow, and then highlight it again to create a more shiny look. We can also indicate the hair has a bit of what's it called? It's a little raised by having this type of shading. So again, following through on the highlight up top of the hair. So rim light all around here, gotta follow through under the hair alongside the outer rim of the hair silhouette as well. And this gives you opportunity to kind of indicate some strands of hair sticking out, which in the end will make it feel like hair, giving that nice texture. And of course we can select it with the lasso tool and clean that area up just a tad using the airbrush. Of course, making sure it's not too heavy or too light. Now we're gonna put back the hair. There we go. And of course indicate a bit of shadow casted from this strand of hair onto the skin. And of course for that too, I want to keep her pointy nose. And we can go ahead and put some of those lines that we did for the dude. It's gonna be a bit more subtle, more subtle. And have a bit of highlight. Like that. And we can have a nice little highlight inside the eyes. Put a bit of shadow in there. and clean this area up. Just keep blending it in. Maybe we can have a bit of it down here too, and up here. A bit of it overall. And we're gonna flip it back. We gotta clean up here. She has a pretty big forehead. Honestly. We can probably fix that later somehow. Let me try to see if I can just move this whole area up. There we go. And of course, once you're happy, you try to blend it in, erase it. There we go. Clean up the chin. Save. Maybe put a bit of freckling all around, just like the guy, just a tad. Indicate a bit of the eyebrow texture. Maybe make the eyes a bit more dull looking so we can bring up the nice highlight in the eyes. Last but not least, let's work on the ear. Let's select the ear with the lasso tool and work on it and clean some of it up using the colors that we already have. Using the airbrush to do this now. I want to make her ear nice and smooth. So why am I using the airbrush instead of the solid round brush? That is because I have a lasso around it, so it's already pretty sharp on the edges. The inside could be soft. Also, gonna finish it up with a bit of solid round brush. Now I'm going to reverse selection and make sure underneath her ear has a bit of shadow and hair indentation. I'll shade it like this so that it feels like the ear is, how do you say, making a dent on the hair because the hair is behind the ear. There we go. Now we can deselect and you can see exactly what I mean. Nice indent around the ear. Let me see if I can indicate a bit of the other side of the cheek here. Maybe move this up. Extend the eyebrows. And have a bit of shadow overlapping, cast it from the hair onto the skin. There we And of course finishing it off with a bit of airbrush to blend everything together. Can airbrush inside the hair slightly, just a bit. What else can we do for opportunity? Indicate the eyes slightly on the other side. And again, oops, let's create another layer for a bit of just some decorations on the hair. Actually, there we go. And indicate an indentation in the hair. And we could probably do without the hair on this side. Oops. Go back to the female layer. Let's flip over just to make sure that we are on the right. Actually, maybe just a bit on the outside. So now I'm going about just correcting some of the mistakes, if there is any. Making sure that this eye is in shadow. Oops. Let me see how it looks if I made her eye a bit bigger. It's not too bad. Maybe if I made her look up slightly. And using the same steps, lighten on the inside and then paint a pupil in there, then we have the highlight. I kind of like this look a little better. Zoom out. Yeah, a lot of experimenting. Clean up the nose. Just a tad. There we go. Actually, gotta make sure the nose shadow is more present. Have a bit of blush. Actually, oops, that's too much. Have a bit of actually, go back. we can put on the hair gear. Now, as I did for the guy, we're just going to erase parts of it. Let's say it's overlapped by hair. And of course, we're gonna have similar pattern, except this time I'm going to make it a bit brighter looking. So her hair gear is a little bit brighter, light in tone, but following the same pattern. Now that we have that, make sure to indicate shadow. So now we gotta paint the hair shadow. And of course, gotta indicate the indentation of this gear on the hair. Just patches of hair. There we go. Indicate that. And on this side too. There we go. Maybe have a bit of highlight show up here, just to make it feel move the highlights down actually, so it feels more more grounded to the hair. Okay, now we can put up the highlight so that it contrasts nicely with the shadow that we put up. There you go. It's a little different from the other ones. There we go. It's a little messy, but you guys get the point. And of course we can have some nice beads around the hairdress, since this is the girl version. And we can have a bit of blue, so these will be blue, and then maybe a bit of pink. And of course we gotta add those highlights, so add the highlights, and then same goes for the pink ones. Make sure to have the shadow casted on the hair by them. And then we have the highlight. Very systematic. And of course, if you have the time, you can go back on them. Now I'm gonna see if I can actually make this darker now that I feel if it's darker, it'll show better. Because of that, I have to go back with a darker brush and just kind of outline it. So a lot of times this happens. I usually go over everything again if I'm not happy with the choices I made. But definitely get used to it, because the more you do it, the better you'll get at it. So it's actually a good thing. And of course, let's see if we can actually indicate a bit of braiding over here. So just have that nice braid texture. So braids are actually quite challenging. It's hard to explain, but I start off with using a dark color to just make the general shape of the braid, and then I can outline it like so. And then, last but not least, add the highlights. Highlights can be done a number of ways. This way, the logic behind it is the lighting is coming from above, and I'm only highlighting the side of the braid for each little knot, the upper side. And then you just have to elaborate and keep going with it. Shadow and highlights. And then we have this one-off hair strand here. There we go. And we can finish it off with a nice bead at the bottom. Actually, maybe she can just have braid on one side. And then flip it over so I can elaborate on it. Oops. Maybe reduce the size of the braid. Keep it a bit smaller. There we go. And blend that in. And of course, gotta define the ear now. Last but not least, gotta indicate that shadow casted on top of the skin by the braid. And just going to work on the hair over here just a bit. Indicate some of the hair strands. Once I'm happy, I merge everything down. It's good. Now onto the eyes. I'm gonna do it another way. So have the shadow in the eyes and select a blue tone and then paint the eyelashes in that highlight. Top it off with pupils and a bit of highlight. Actually, I don't like it. Let's go back. Undo. Yeah, I like this better. I would just keep it at that then. Maybe a bit of shadow underneath here. And we will have a bit of that marking that we had for the male character, for the female. Instead of going for the chin, we're just not gonna go for the chin tattoo for the female. Indicate shadow from the hair onto the ear. And now, let's start with those earrings. So again, just like the dude, we start off with a very dark color and then we're going to slowly transition that, layering on highlight. Like that, and then don't forget the shadow. Cast it from the earring on top of the ear. There we have it. Merge it down once you're happy. Last thing, just indicating the fold of the arm here. Actually, we'll just keep it at that. And last but not least, we're gonna go on and add some rim light. On the outside where the shadow is. And on this side too. There we go. Of course, we can do the same for the female. Indicate a bit of hair in the background. Except this hair has some intense lighting casted behind it, so it's brighter. There we go. And last but not least, can work on the background slightly. So a combination of dark blue and pink. This is just for the sake of having a nice background to make the character pop out. And this background in no way is it's just a company background, it's not a serious one. Actually, let's try to see if the background will look better if it was upside down. I think I prefer it this way. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed that. So that was transitioning from 2D to 3D. Alright, let's take a look. So we had this. We took one of my old pieces, which was when back then I was more into anime or line art, and then slowly transitioning it into more of a 3D painted look. I hope the tips I talked about in this tutorial will help you guys, and definitely use it however you want. Don't need to follow every step. Hopefully some of the steps help you achieve achieve what you want in your own style. So yeah, thank you guys for listening, and I will see you in the next voiceover tutorial. Have a great day, guys.